Picture this. Somewhere in America right now, in a conference room with no windows, a small group of people you've never heard of are writing the rules of your life. They're not elected. They're not appointed. Most of them aren't even lawyers. But the words are typing on their laptops tonight. Those words might determine whether you can sue your employer, what chemicals end up in your drinking water, or how much you'll pay for the medicine that keeps your mother alive. This isn't a conspiracy. It's not hidden in shadows. It's happening in plain sight, in meeting rooms with catered lunches and PowerPoint presentations. And it's been going on so long in such a mundane, bureaucratic way that we've stopped noticing it at all. This is the story of how our laws get made when nobody's watching. Here's something most of us learned in school. A bill becomes a law when Congress votes on it, the president signs it, and democracy happens. Clean. Simple. The way the Schoolhouse Rock song taught us. But that's not quite how it works anymore. Every year, Congress passes maybe 200 laws. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? But in that same year, federal agencies will issue roughly 3,000 new regulations. 3,000. Rules that have the full force of law, that can fine you, shut down your business, or land you in court. And where do those regulations come from? Who writes the first draft? Often, the answer is the very industries being regulated. It's called regulatory capture, but that phrase is too academic, too distant to capture what's really happening. So let me tell you about a lawyer named Wendy. That's not her real name, but her story is real enough. Wendy spent 15 years working for a pharmaceutical company, navigating FDA regulations, finding the loopholes, the ambiguities, the places where the rules bent. She was brilliant at it. And then, one day, she got a job offer from the FDA itself. Better title, better pension, a chance, they told her, to serve the public good. So she took it. And suddenly, Wendy wasn't just navigating the rules anymore. She was writing them. The same regulations she'd spent years working around, she now had the power to shape. Does that change a person? Maybe. Probably. But here's the thing. Wendy still has lunch with her old colleagues. She still goes to the same industry conferences. In 4 or 5 years, there's a good chance she'll go back to industry with an even better salary and the invaluable knowledge of exactly how the system works from the inside. This isn't corruption in the traditional sense. Nobody's stuffing cash in envelopes. This is something more subtle, more structural. The revolving door, they call it. And it spins constantly, quietly, between corporate boardrooms and regulatory agencies. But the influence goes deeper still, starts earlier in the process, in places most Americans have never heard of. There's an organization called ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council. It sounds boring, bureaucratic. That's precisely the point. For decades, ALEC has brought together state legislators and corporate executives to draft model legislation. Template bills, ready-made laws that a state representative can introduce word for word back home without having to write a single sentence themselves. Imagine you're a newly elected state legislator in Oklahoma or Wisconsin or Florida. You're passionate, you want to make a difference, but you're overwhelmed. You've got a tiny staff, maybe one overworked aide, and you're suddenly responsible for understanding healthcare policy, environmental law, criminal justice, education reform. It's drinking from a fire hose. And then someone hands you a perfectly formatted, legally sound, ready-to-go bill that sounds reasonable, that addresses a real issue, that saves you hundreds of hours of work. What would you do? Hundreds of legislators take that deal every year. They introduce those bills. Sometimes they pass. And suddenly, laws that look remarkably similar start appearing in state after state, like echoes, like ripples spreading across a pond. Restrictions on municipal broadband networks, right-to-work laws, voter ID requirements, stand-your-ground statutes, each one carefully crafted not in the state capitol, but in a hotel conference room months earlier with corporate lawyers sitting at the table. Is it legal? Yes. Is it transparent? Technically. ALEC is registered as a nonprofit. Their donors are public information. If you know where to look, if you have the time to dig through tax filings and cross-reference show organizations. But most people don't have that time. Most journalists don't have the resources to trace these connections anymore. And so the work continues quietly, efficiently transforming corporate wish lists into the law of the land. And then there are the moments of crisis, because nothing opens the door to rapid legal change quite like fear. After the September 11th attacks, lawmakers were desperate to act, to be seen doing something, anything, to prevent another tragedy. In that chaos, in that vulnerability, a bill called the Patriot Act moved through Congress at breathtaking speed. It was hundreds of pages long. Most members of Congress later admitted they never read it in full before voting. How could they? It appeared in its final form just days before the vote. But someone had read it. Someone had written it. And many of its provisions, expanding surveillance powers, limiting judicial oversight, granting new authorities to law enforcement. These weren't drafted in the frantic weeks after the towers fell. They've been sitting in drawers at the Justice Department and in corporate security firms for years, waiting for the right moment. Proposals that would have been controversial, even radioactive, in normal times suddenly became not just acceptable, but patriotic. This is the pattern. The proposals are written long before the crisis hits. They're refined, perfected, ready to go. And when the moment comes, when the public is distracted or frightened, when lawmakers are under pressure to do something fast, that's when they slide through. Financial deregulation after economic scares. Environmental rollbacks after natural disasters. Privacy provisions tucked into must-pass spending bills. The crisis creates the opportunity. The legislation was already written. So what do we do with this knowledge? How do we live in a democracy where the first draft of our laws is so often written by those who profit from them? Maybe it starts with simply seeing it, recognizing that the process of lawmaking has evolved far beyond what most of us imagine, that influence operates in ways more sophisticated than simple bribery, that the real power often lies not in the moment of the vote, but in all the invisible hours before it, when the language is being chosen, the definitions being crafted, the loopholes being carefully preserved. The people in those windowless conference rooms, they're not villains from a movie. They're professionals doing what they believe is their job, operating within a system that has slowly normalized their presence at the table where our laws are born. They go home to their families. They coach Little League. They believe, many of them, that they're making things work better, more efficiently. But democracy was never supposed to be efficient. It was supposed to be loud, messy, public. It was supposed to belong to all of us, not just to those with the time, resources, and expertise to be in the room when the rules get written. The quiet architects of our legal system are counting on our distraction, our exhaustion, our assumption that someone else is paying attention. Maybe the most radical thing we can do is prove them wrong. To look up from our lives long enough to ask, who wrote this law? Who benefited from it? And whose voice was missing when the words were chosen? Because the rooms where it happens, they're only quiet because we're not in them. Yet,